recording. No, we're not done. Okay, so James said they're a weed. They're a weed. What does that mean? Yeah, what does it mean if something's a weed? Huh? Annoying to pick, okay. One of my favorite definitions of weed was always a flower that's in the wrong place. A plant that's in the wrong place. I mean, this plant is food and medicine. This was brought to North America intentionally by European settlers. Johnny Appleseed, how many of you have been to the Johnny Appleseed Festival? Okay, every year. Johnny Appleseed didn't just plant apple trees. He actually also planted dandelions and plantain and other European plants that people would have counted on for food. He actually spread those. With seeds. Seeds are amazing. So we very often end up calling these generalist species weed species because they're adaptable. They live anywhere. Dandelions can grow up through a crack in the cement. They can grow in really rich garden soil. They can grow in sandy, soil. They can grow in strip mines, old strip mine land. They can grow in toxic polluted soil. They can grow just about anywhere. They're a weed species, huh? No, I love them. I absolutely love dandelions. I think they're pretty, and I don't care when they go to seed either. Whatever. Everybody's got to reproduce, Yeah. They can adapt their height. If you look at dandelions out in a tall meadow, they grow. There's my little dandelion leaf. And in a really tall meadow situation, you'll have really tall dandelions. If you look at dandelions in a mowed yard, you have really short dandelions that blossom. Why? Because they keep chopping them off. So they're like, okay, shorter blossoms. And they produce shorter blossoms. Because remember, flowers are all about what? Oh, come on, you're allowed to say it. Flowers are all about sex. Flowers are just sex on a stem. They are. This is going to make Valentine's Day really interesting for you people, isn't it? Good. So they're altering their reproductive behavior based on their environment. Yeah, here's a big bunch of sacs. Well, it's actually just reproductive structures. Here's a bunch of basically sex organs.
So if you give someone a bunch of sex, then that means that you want sex?
No, I don't know that it goes. I don't know that it's a direct translation. You might want to be really careful with that because it might not have the consequences that it just might be taken poorly. But you can tell them, here's a big bunch of reproductive structures. Because that's what it is. That's what you're giving them. Huh? Well, no, sex is a different thing than reproductive structures. Reproductive structures are the organs with which sexual reproduction is accomplished. Sexual reproduction is reproduction that requires two parents, and the sex act is a physical joining of two organisms. Like, fish don't have sex, but they reproduce sexually.
Well, then they don't.
No, they don't. No, they don't have sex, but they reproduce sexually. In some species, yes. In other species, no. It depends. Some flowers produce both eggs and sperm. Some flowers only produce eggs or only produce sperm. Yeah. Pollen! Have you not been here when I told you that your car is covered in plant sperm? I've been saying that since the beginning of the year. You walk out in the spring, your car is covered in pollen. You can walk back in the house and say to your parents, hey, my car is all covered in sperm. And it's true.
I bet my mom would start crying.
I have a feeling a lot of parents would really, former Beaver local teacher. Anyway, no. It's true. Pollen is plant sperm, yes. So what are the dandelions doing when you have short dandelions in a mowed lawn and tall dandelions in a field? They're adapting their reproductive behavior. Yeah, because they're not getting chopped off. They're not getting chopped off, and so they're actually getting to maturity and reproducing. They're awesome generalists. Generalists get called weed species. You wanna know what probably the best generalist on the entire planet is? You interested in the best generalist on the entire planet?
Yeah.
What do you think it might be? Awesome, awesome, awesome generalist. Awesome, 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 awesome generalist.
It's me.
Humans. We are rock star generalists. And I've scribbled all over us. But anyway, we are phenomenal generalists.
That woman's evil, dandelion.
We can exist from the tropics to the poles. Humans can eat a tremendous variety of foods. Vegetarian diet? Sure. Mostly meat diet? Sure. Live in, crazy hot, humid areas? Sure. Live in the deserts? Sure. Live in the Arctic? Sure. Hunt large game? Sure. We can change our behavior. I mean, how did Stone Age humans hunt large game? In groups. Spears. They modified their behavior and created tools to allow them to adapt to a different kind of game hunting. Where, humans are small game hunters. Yeah, you can take out a slingshot and kill rabbits. I mean, that was a primitive means that Stone Age humans would have used to hunt. Yeah. Amazingly adaptable. Which makes humans, guess what? We're a weed. We are a weed species, folks. Well, I don't attach judgment to the term weed because I'm rather fond of quite a lot of things that some people call weeds.
I don't see anything just walking around.
But we're a weed species. We can exist anywhere. We're incredibly hardy and incredibly adaptable, and that's what really defines a generalist. So we're amazing generalists, which makes us a weed species. Yeah. Yeah, you can say that raccoons are a weed species. Here, the rats are definitely a weed species. Here's another one that gets called a weed species. Cockroach is totally a weed species. I think there might be species of cockroach in Antarctica. Here's another one that's a weed species. If you've ever been to an urban area, if you've ever been to, cities,
Those are rats.
people call them winged rats. What is it?
Winged rats.
Winged rats. That's what my husband calls them. It's not a winged rat. What is it?
I know that, but it's like...
It's a pigeon. It's a pigeon. Seagulls are like that too. There are some species of seagulls that are very, very general. The ones that are living in the parking lot at the mall are generalist species. They don't need like an ocean shore and just the right kind of food. French fries and hamburger buns in the parking lot will do. So yeah, I mean, this is a generalist species. They can live just about anywhere. You know what the real common name for pigeons is? You may not know this. Do pigeons look like any other bird that you're familiar with? Yes, pigeons are actually also called rock doves. And pigeons in the wild, before there were human cities, would have lived in cliffy, rocky areas. Well, guess what buildings look a lot like? Cliffy, rocky areas. And pigeons are adaptable enough that they'll live in those areas. You'll also find pigeons around old barns, barns that don't have that they're not sealed off well, broken windows, broken slats. You'll find pigeons roosting in barns. They live in a variety of habitats. They're good generalists. So now, what if we talk about a species whose tolerance curve looks like that? So maybe their green zone is pretty darn thin. And, life is not so flexible for them. Badly drawn, I realize. My apologies. Lots of space where they just plain old die. This would be a specialist. So this is the next thing we're talking about. So for a specialist, they have a narrow niche. Okay? Specialists have incredibly narrow niches. And specialists tend, of course, to eat a limited variety of foods. Can you think of any species that you're familiar with that only eats one or two kind of things? Pandas. Pandas are the classic example. What do pandas eat? Bamboo. What else do pandas eat? Bamboo. What else do pandas eat? Bamboo. Sometimes they eat bamboo. They've also been known to eat bamboo. And they eat bamboo. They eat bamboo. That's all they eat. They don't eat fruit. They don't eat berries.
It's like the blackbirds, like they don't prefer meat.
They're strongly omnivorous. And they will eat meat, but yeah. No, pandas eat bamboo.
Interesting.
Pandas only eat a few species of bamboo. I mean, there are hundreds of species of bamboo. Bamboo is a grass. I think you knew that, right? But there are really only a few species of bamboo that pandas, the great pandas, eat. And that bamboo only grows in one little region of the world. So guess where pandas can live? In that one little region of the world. They feed them, they plant and feed them their preferred food. Yeah, no kidding. Seriously. You're that picky? Get out. I don't know how zoos go about getting bamboo to feed their pandas, but yeah, they have to feed them bamboo. Have you followed when like the National Zoo in DC has baby pandas? It's a huge deal. Because, okay, so coyotes, we said they can have 3 pups, they can have 20 pups. They can mate once a year, they can mate a couple times a year. They can mate, in a secluded woodland setting with Barry White playing and candles and roses. They can mate behind a dumpster in downtown Cleveland. Not real fussy, not real picky about what they eat, where they mate, how they reproduce. Pandas are so tough to get to reproduce in the wild. I mean, they don't reproduce in great numbers. They only have like one baby every so many years, and the females only go into heat every so often. And there's apparently, an elaborate, like, she will not mate with him unless, I don't know what, his breath smells right and he brings her flowers. I don't know what. But they're not real flexible about their requirements. Like, it's got to be just so. And they've had a huge problem getting pandas to reproduce in captivity. I mean, the population is really threatened in the wild. They're adorable. I want to give them a hug. I don't think their gut's set up to digest it. You could, you know what? You could do the research. Research it. Question. They're eating plant matter like a cow. I mean, they're grinding a really tough grass all day long. So they probably don't even have, they wouldn't have predator teeth. They would have flat teeth. They would have...
For sure we have flat teeth too.
You do. Well, you're an omnivore. You're by nature an omnivore.
Well,
You have some pointy teeth. You have some flat teeth. You could still bite your finger off.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm saying I'm not going into the panda enclosure and poking them. But, yeah, I wouldn't take the chance. But it's a reasonable question to ask, oh, so they do have a canine. Okay. So they've got you've got a pretty good canine too.
Look how cute. Those teeth
They're like puppies. They're going down the hill.
No,
They
I
like
don't
try to
think
grab
so.
his hand so he can get him.
Okay.
I totally forgot poultries existed.
You're a Fruit Loop. Okay, so anyway, name me another species that only eats one thing.
Horse.
No. No, they eat vegetation, but to quote a woman I know who is a horse person who lives on a dairy farm, yeah, cows don't care as long as their belly's full. Grass, goldenrod, timothy, clover, whatever's in the pasture, they don't care. It doesn't have to be good pasture. Pigs are fantastic omnivores. Pigs will eat, yeah. Okay, so name me another species that only eats one thing. They're also cute. They're also cuddly. The sad part is they smell like cough drops.
What?
Pigs smell like cow.
I was close.
Koala bears. Yes. Do you know what koala bears eat? Eucalyptus bark and leaves. And they make cough drops out of them. And I have heard from people who've gone to Australia and gotten up close with koala bears. They're adorable, but when you get up close, they stink like cough drops. They smell like
I like
little
cough drops.
Well, like mentholated cough drops. They smell like eucalyptus cough drops. They are like these little teddy bears that are greasy and smell like cough drops. Well, I mean, okay, so so they're a specialist. What can they eat? Eucalyptus. Where do they live? Only where eucalyptus grows. Now, what's interesting is a lot of people in California, because the climate is similar enough to Australia that eucalyptus will grow there, people have planted eucalyptus in Southern California. So, could you introduce koalas as a non-native invasive species in California? Yes, probably. There might be enough eucalyptus there to support them. But that's all they eat, is eucalyptus. So they're limited in where they grow. Again, they don't reproduce in large numbers. Head up, Sid. Thanks. They don't have a lot of flexibility in how or when they reproduce. They're not real flexible. They do probably have, they do have weird teeth. Yeah. So, that hellbender that we talked about. Remember our friend the hellbender, Cryptobranchus alligensis, the giant salamander that's so ugly, it's so ugly, only a mother could love it, and even its mother is having second thoughts? They are really ugly. Where'd my picture go? Where did my picture? Oh, here's another specialist. You know what this is?
Cactus.
It's not just any cactus.
It's all cactus.
This is a Saguaro Cactus. Yes. What about a sloth? They're probably pretty darn specialist. They're probably pretty specialist. What about, so this Saguaro Cactus only grows in one place in the entire world.
Mexico.
Actually, northern Mexico, southern Arizona. So the Sonoran Desert. When I lived in Arizona, I lived where the saguaros grow. I lived near Saguaro National Monument, which is now Saguaro National Park. It's pronounced saguaro. Saguaro. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. But, girl from Ohio always just said saguaro, because that's what people from Ohio say, even if they live in Arizona. Saguaro. Yes? Pardon the spelling error. Thank you for pointing it out. There, cactus. Fixed. Yeah, they only grow in a very limited range. So when I lived in Tucson, these grow in Tucson, Saguaro Cactus. They grow between about 1,500 feet above sea level and about 3,000 feet above sea level. So out there, the mountains are big, and I actually, for a lot of the time that I lived out west, I lived up on the mountain at 8,000 feet above sea level. And you would come up the road from Tucson, and there were saguaro cactuses, and there were saguaro cactuses, and there were saguaro cactuses, and then there were no saguaro cactuses. Because once you got above about 3,000 feet, they couldn't survive. They're very sensitive to the cold. And so, up where you ever really got much of a frost, they don't survive. The seedlings don't survive, they die. They're a specialist. They have a very limited range. Now, they're very threatened because they don't look like much. It takes a saguaro cactus 75 years to grow its first arm. So you see how this has got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 arms? This cactus may be 300 or 400 years old. They're very slow growing. They don't reproduce very often. I mean, it takes them something like 50 years to reproduce the first time.
They come from such a small seed.
They come from, yeah, I mean, they're a real specialist species. They have a narrow range of temperatures they can survive. They have a small geographic area that they grow in. They grow slowly. They can't really change their growth rate. There's not any variation in that. They reproduce, on a very limited schedule. They only reproduce one way. Some plants especially are capable of both sexual and asexual reproduction. Strawberries are a good example of this. If you have a strawberry plant, you'll notice it gets runners, and you get little pieces that come off with roots. If anybody in your life has these guys, what are they? Spider plants. And spider plants reproduce asexually. They send off these little shoots off the tips of those canes, but they also flower, which is, flowers are all about sex. That's sexual reproduction. Saguaros only reproduce sexually. They can't reproduce asexually. So they're really limited. They're really specialists. Now, let me ask you this. Generalist versus specialist. This is like Godzilla versus King Kong or Superman versus Batman or whoever else. What are these stupid games people play? Like they pit one supervillain against another. Like Dracula versus the Wolfman. Who wins? I don't care.
Thor versus Silver Surfer.
Yeah. Again, don't care. But generalist versus specialist. Who wins?
Generalists.
Why?
They have more that they can.
Yeah. They can adapt. Who's more likely to go extinct if conditions change? Specialists. What happens to those cute little pandas if the bamboo species that they live on gets a virus and it all dies? They all die. What happens to koalas if eucalyptus trees? I mean, you really, like Dutch elm disease happened in this country. There really are not many elm trees. We currently have the green ash, emerald ash borer. We might not have any green ash trees in 50 years. If you're a species that only feeds on one thing, that thing goes extinct, you die. If climate change changes you understand that climate change will make some parts of the world warmer and some parts colder. If the Sonoran Desert gets 15 or 5 degrees colder on average, what's going to happen to saguaros? They might die. You know. So being a specialist is not necessarily a good thing. This is also a good life metaphor. Mr. Voorhees and I have talked about this a lot as far as teenagers are concerned and life metaphors. Generalists thrive, specialists struggle to survive. Be a good jack of all trades. Be well-rounded. You do better that way. You have a better outcome. Okay, I'm going to hand you the study guides. You'll have about 15 minutes today to work on them. They will be due at the end of class tomorrow, but I would suggest that you're probably going to want to take them home and pick away at them. That's it.